There we go. All right. Maybe now you guys can actually hear me. Uh, Morning, but no sound. Oh, well, that's right. There's a little bit of a delay. Is there sound now? I may have to refire it. Let's poll the audience. Yay, okay, awesome. Yeah. So, as I fired up the stream, I was saying, sorry for the delay. I was experiencing technical difficulties today. And as I was explaining to everybody that I was experiencing technical difficulties, I was experiencing yet another technical difficulty. So, fortunately, this one was really easy to explain. I just failed to turn my microphone on. So, good morning, Dottie. Good morning, Rob. How are you guys doing today? And anybody else who happens to be hanging out watching. Oh, all right. Let's take a big old sip of coffee before we dive into today. Mm, mm. That's Yukon Gold right there. Not going to tell you what brand it is, though, because they're not one of my sponsors. So, oh, that'd be really cool. I wonder if I could get a coffee brand to sponsor this show. I'd be okay with drinking free coffee. Anyways, so what I want to talk with you guys about today is taking a balanced approach. And what I mean by that is a balanced approach to everything. The physical aspects of your life, the mental aspects of your life, the emotional aspects of your life, the nutritional aspects of your life. Um, if you're anything like me, or I guess I should say more like how I used to be, I've definitely gotten much better as the years have gone on. Um, you tend to put all of your eggs into a single basket, and you become very hyper focused on, you know, specific areas, avenues, and tasks. Um, I guess the best way I can kind of explain this is anecdote and kind of go back to the beginnings or the origins of the Dan story, if you will. So when it first kind of all occurred to me that I was overweight, I was unhealthy, and I was unhappy, my focus on what I could do to change or alter those things became very consuming. And I tended to go very aggressively in one direction. For example, one of the first things that I started trying to do is I started trying to run. Just every single day. I was like, I'm going to run a mile every day. Yeah, I think I did that for maybe 2 days and was like, oh, this is miserable. This is bull crap. Why do people do this? Why does anybody do this? And of course, the silver lining of that story is that years later down the road, I started doing Spartan races, like the Beast, the 17-mile ones. So, but anyways, going back to the anecdote with that, so the focus became all consuming, and going from doing absolutely nothing to trying to force myself into this physical fitness regimen was absurd. I started, I stopped, I started, I stopped. And this was a cycle that repeated itself for years. I'd get into a physically active routine. It would last a week, 2 weeks, maybe tops, and then it would peter out. And one thing that I did notice is over time, it was getting a little bit easier to kind of maintain a streak, but the focus was all off. The focus was on the balance was out of whack. So let's also then use that same lens, and let's kind of anecdotally look at what I started doing for nutrition, around that same time, that same area. I didn't know anything about the topic. I just knew that I very clearly was not eating right, was not eating well or healthy. So one of the first things that I started to do was I simply tried to cut out all the good things that I enjoyed eating. And that left me incredibly hungry and famished because I wasn't getting anywhere near the amount of calories that my body had become accustomed to. and I really was not enjoying food. And while food is fuel, it's you have to be able to enjoy a part of what you're doing. You're putting that fuel into you, and if you have this disdain or this distaste for it, again, balance. It's not something you're going to be able to do long term. Good morning, Janet. Thank you so much for joining us again on this lovely Saturday morning. It does sneak up on you. It snuck up on me today, too. I definitely rolled out of bed a little bit later than I intended and started the coffee pot a little bit later than I intended and started the show a little bit later than I intended. You can see the pattern here, right? um, so let's kind of continue analyzing this anecdote of the early days of Dan as he was trying to figure everything out. So we kind of talked about how I dove into physical fitness without, any semblance of pattern, reason, or rhyme, would hit that burnout point pretty quickly. And the same thing happened with nutrition, do really well for a couple days and then just jump off the wagon and start binge eating again. For the mental state, it was also like this. There'd be some days where I just absolutely hate myself. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say that not truly understanding what it means to say that and feel that about yourself, but I hated myself. And I hated myself because I was fat, because I was unhealthy. No, I want you to keep in mind that what I'm telling you right now was the mindset of 16-year-old Dan, consumed in a world that was, very, very small at the time. And there wasn't a lot of knowledge going on here. So, I hated myself because I was fat, because I was unhealthy. At least that's what I thought. It really wasn't until much later in life that I started to recognize that what I was feeling, it wasn't that particular emotion at all. Um, it was actually a culmination of depression and anxiety, and it turned into a resentment. And it was like, why can't I do it? What's so special about all these other people who seem like they've got it all. They've got these rockin' bodies and all this, and why can't I do it? And my journey at that point became very consumed with the superficial, the artificial. And that's a lot of why it was very unsustainable. That's a lot of why I never found success with it early on. Just those short-lived bursts of energy and effort. And it wasn't until years later that I started to learn more about the science of exercise and what drives and causes muscle adaptation and how to actually build muscles. And of course, by that time, a lot of reckoning had happened in my life as far as, how I felt about myself, how I felt about a lot of things. And I found that it was much easier to maintain an exercise regimen when the focus wasn't around this all-consuming idea of losing weight, losing weight, losing weight. Instead, the focus became more about challenging myself, about building muscles, about getting better at these exercises that were difficult today. And then in a few weeks, I was becoming more masterful. I was building a craft. I was getting better at a skill. And suddenly, when the focus shifted from lose weight, lose weight, lose weight to hone, refine, craft, and get better at this skill, suddenly I could do it much, much, much longer without hitting a burnout point. I wasn't forcing these ridiculous workouts on myself anymore that were just, driving me to the point of vomiting. I was actually utilizing science and structure in my workout to challenge the various body muscle groupings and my cardiovascular system. And all of a sudden, I was able to then take that and transfer as like, okay, I'm gonna I'm going to start running a mile every day after work. And I said, all right, hold up. I'm not going to run that mile. I'm going to start by just doing a mile. I'm going to walk a mile. And sure enough, every day after work, I would walk my mile. And then after a week or so of doing that, I said, you know what, I'm going to try jogging a little bit. So I jogged a little bit. It was painful. It was, burned my lungs a lot. And what I'd do is I'd stop and walk as soon as, that real discomfort started to settle in. And then, of course, I was keeping track of what was going on. And just like with the exercising and starting to understand that I was honing and crafting a skill, cardiovascular exercise was also a skill, and it was something that through consistency you would start to get better at. You wouldn't feel that flaming burning sensation in your lungs anymore. Suddenly you could carry yourself further at a quicker pace and be in that flight phase for a lot longer. And by the end of the summer, I ran my first mile. I did not jog, I ran my first mile. I mean, granted, I think I did it in like 9 minutes. But you got to remember, oh gosh, what would I have been, like 17 or 18 at this point? For a 17, 18-year-old kid who had been fat most of his life and very out of shape and not very healthy at all, starting and running a mile, it was one of the greatest feelings of accomplishment I had had to date. And it's funny to look back on that and kind of reflect on how everything started, and it was just like this all or nothing mentality. And then really all it took was to take a step back and stop trying to look at it at this all or nothing and just do some little things, challenge yourself in a very small way every single day. And I think a lot of that, a lot of the learning that I did through that journey is really what's brought me to my fundamental understanding of what balance in life is, and not just in physical health or nutritional health, but also a lot in my mental and emotional health too. I can take lessons from that time period in my life, and I can recognize that, okay, when there's a really high stress or highly anxious situation or scenario going on, I can go all in on it, or I can take a step back. I can deal with a little bit of it right now and kind of compartmentalize it, just take it in pieces. And that in itself, over the years, has become a skill, a refined craft, if you will. And believe it or not, stress management, crisis management, like dealing with anxiety, is also a skill that you can develop over time. Now, this isn't a message to discredit anybody that deals with depression or anxiety, because as human beings, we are essentially just giant cucumbers filled with anxiety. And everybody has to deal with these to a varying degree. And unfortunately, there are some of us out there that, some of the wiring gets messed up in here, and some of the chemicals become imbalanced, and it becomes a lot more than just dealing with it. It becomes very consuming for people like that. And I want to say that what I'm saying right now, as far as building your toolbox and building your skill sets for dealing with depression, dealing with stress, dealing with anxiety, this isn't a message to discredit depression and anxiety. It's a message to say that yes, they are very real. Yes, everyone experiences them to a degree. Some of us experience them to a much higher degree. But everyone is capable of expanding their toolbox and learning and teaching themselves how to deal with their brand a little bit better. And it's not something that you're just going to one day wake up and magically have the puzzle pieces to. But this is also one of the reasons why, throughout my life, throughout my craft, throughout my profession, I've said to people, listen, there are resources out there that exist to help you learn coping mechanisms, to help you learn the tools and the managements for these things. Because unfortunately, not all of us are A, going to go out and educate ourselves on these topics. Not all of us are B, going to practice, hone, refine, and get better at dealing with these things. And C, there's a reason teachers exist. There's a reason that we have an entire industry devoted to where you can pay somebody who's already taken all the time to learn and disseminate information and package it for you so you don't have to go through that process. We have trainers for physically fitness related things. We have nutritionists for nutritionally related educational matters. We have therapists, physiologists. We have acupuncturists, chiropractic. We have all these different disciplines where these people took the time to educate themselves on these topics so they can then teach you. And that's just like the physical sciences in the industry. That's not to say, there's classes for writing and poetry, voice acting, getting better and learning, mathematics and science. Someone has taken the time to learn it, to disseminate it, package it, and teach you. Now, that being said, you have to go out of your way to find those people. You have to go out of your way to then learn the material. There is still some work involved. They did the heavy lifting. They did the research portion and, trimming the fat, if you will. Love using that expression when I'm talking about, cutting out all the stuff that you don't necessarily need. Of course, the disclosure there is fat is not bad. Fat is not the enemy. But, trim the fat's a really old expression, so whatever. But balance. Getting back to that and understanding and recognizing that everything in your life needs to have a balance. The all or nothing mentality is killing us. It's preventing you from reaching your actual goals. It's causing more harm than it is helping. And it's going to put you into a cycle of leaping forward and then running back, and then leaping forward, and then running back. And it's one of the reasons why we see the famous or infamous yo-yo diet, or the yo-yo phenomenon. And that's where someone will put themselves on this extremely hardcore, very rigid diet that's so far out of their wheelhouse, that's so far out of their comfort zone, that they can only maintain it for a short period of time. Now, granted, maybe that short period of time is a month. And in that month, they drop a whole bunch of weight. Mostly water weight, but they drop a whole bunch of weight. And then by the end of that month, they just can't stand it anymore. They can't stand this rigid, structured lifestyle diet that is just not for them. And then they go back to doing everything that they were doing before, and a little bit more, because their body's been in a caloric deficit, and they binge. And suddenly, you find that the line that was doing this is now doing this. So not only is it yo-yoing, but it's getting even higher. It's moving even further up, and it's sad. And I don't mean it's the individual sad. I mean, it's sad for someone like me to watch someone struggle like that, and to know that I have the knowledge and the tools and the resources to help them. But unfortunately, it's become so ingrained in us that this is how, you solve issues. They're temporary. You put a Band-Aid on it. You do something different for a little bit, and then you go back to what you're doing before, and everything's fine. This just isn't true. It's not how the real world works. It's not how any of this works. It's how it works in this fantasy world, but that's not how it actually works. So, kind of looping back to what we had started discussing with, the origins of my personal story. What I want to say is, if you are at that place right now where you look in the mirror and you say, I don't like what I see, I don't like this, I need to change, you are at the very beginning. Even if you've done a whole bunch of fitness regimens and routines for years and years and years, even if you've tried all this different types of crash dieting, if you're still looking in the mirror and you're saying, I don't like what I see, you are still very, very, very much at the beginning of your journey. Because the journey in its overall encompassing form is a journey of love. you want to love being healthy. You want to love taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, putting good food in so your vital organs and tissues function at their optimal capacity. You want to love your body. When you love your body inside and out, the physical changes that you're hyperfixating on, they start to become part of the picture. Now, there are folks out there that start their journey with the physical. You know, they go into their local gym and they say, I need to lose all this weight. It's New Year's Eve. Let's do this. And they'll sign on for like a 6-month program and they'll do really awesome. And they'll get the results that they were looking for. But it doesn't actually fix what they see in the mirror. Sure, they drop a bunch of weight. Sure, maybe their clothes fit better. They've gotten stronger. But their fixation has always been on how they feel about themselves. And unfortunately, no amount of body sculpting, no amount of dieting is ever actually going to fix how you feel about yourself. That's an emotional journey that you have to take all on your own. No, not necessarily all on your own. There is lots of good things out there. So if you are, especially considering, we've been cooped up for months now, and gyms are getting closer and closer, at least in Massachusetts, to opening up and being available again, recognize that there is going to be that urge to enter into that crash mentality, to go for that all or nothing, go for broke. Resist it. Don't jump into the shallow end head first. Step into the water. Acclimate. Pick some short-term goals. Pick some long-term goals. Focus on getting better at a skill. Focus on getting better at a specific lift, a specific exercise. Focus on improving your cardiovascular health. Focus on making better choices nutrition-wise that you also enjoy. Find the balance. And that ultimately is going to lead you to the superficial things that we tend to get so fixated on when it comes to fitness, health, and wellness. I say health and wellness. Realistically, the superficial aspects have nothing to do with health and wellness. They really don't. Superficially speaking, those are just kind of like bonus prizes for winning the game of fitness, winning the game of health, winning the game of wellness. But you got to feel healthy up here. You got to be balanced up here to be healthy here and balanced here, to feel healthy here and be balanced here. It all works together in tandem. You can't have one without the other. And if you do have one without the other, you're like, oh, nay, Dan, I do have one without the other. Unfortunately, it's short-lived. You're going to hit a crash. You don't believe me? Wait for it. It's coming. And I say that tongue-in-cheek because I don't like seeing people in that struggle. I don't like seeing people repeating the mistakes that I made. From what I understand of parenting, because again, I'm not a parent, at least not that I know of, one of the toughest struggles of it is watching your children make the mistakes that you already made, and knowing that no matter what you say, no matter what you educate them on, they're going to keep doing it until they figure it out themselves. Well, as a teacher, that's kind of how I feel when I see people making my mistakes. It's like, I've already made that mistake. Like, let me help you. Let me show you what I did. Let me give you some tools to work with. Let me give you some resources. But unfortunately, that's also where the expression, you can lead a horse to water, comes from. I have helped a lot of people in my time, in my profession, in my career. But I've also encountered people who are looking for that quick fix, who are looking for that crash. And early on in my career, I tried to help them. And they'd be those people who I'd see for a month, then I wouldn't see them for a year. I'd see them for a month, and then I wouldn't see them for a year. And finally, I realized that in situations like that, I was just taking their money. I knew that they weren't in that emotional and mental space to get what it was they wanted out of a physical fitness, nutrition program and routine. And when I finally came to that realization, that was a very pivotal moment for me as a fitness professional. And it's one of the reasons why I actually do a lot of pre-qualifying and interviewing before I even sit down and start training and working with a client these days. Because I don't like the feeling of feeling like I failed somebody. And I've become able to kind of recognize where that is. So now what I do is when I, bring somebody into my fold and I recognize that emotional, that mental struggle, instead of, signing them up for a package or a program, I'll instead just give them advice. I'll make sure they have my number. I'll be like, listen, I'm going to be a resource for you. You can contact me whenever you have questions. And I'll tell you, some people definitely abuse that privilege, but I'm also a super huge nerd and I love talking about this stuff. So even when they, send me texts after midnight asking me a question they've already asked me 100 times involving something nutrition-wise or physically fitness-wise, I still love answering those questions. And I will continue to answer that same question for that same person until it clicks for them. And then when it does finally click, and they do come back to me, and then I see that they're ready, I know that they're ready, they get so much more out of a program than they ever would just jumping into it and doing the crashing and the yo-yoing. So, kind of looping back again, talking about balance, recognize where you're at in your journey and understand that if you're still working out the bugs in the emotional and the mental aspect, take your time with that. Appreciate yourself, love yourself, and then start working on a fitness routine for the challenge of it. Don't start into a fitness routine to lose weight. That is a recipe for disaster. That is a mindset for failure. It is a mentality of short term. If health and wellness are your goal, those are long term. And the effects, the benefits, the statuesque physiques, the bigger muscles, the being less winded going up and down stairs, those are side effects. Those are side effects of absorbing health and wellness as long-term goals into your life. And they come slowly. If you obsess over them, if you fixate on them, you're going to get yourself really depressed and down about fitness and wellness and health. Focus on the more tangible aspects of it. Focus on getting better. Focus on getting stronger. When you make those your focus, just like learning to ride a bike, just like learning to tie your shoes, just like learning any skill, there will be frustrating days. But think of it this way. When you started learning to write your name, did you start learning to write your name so that way you could impress people with cursive manuscript? That sounds kind of silly. Did you start learning how to ride a bike so that way you'd look cool on it? Or did you start learning how to ride the bike because it looked like fun and you wanted to ride it? You wanted to be one of those people. You wanted to be having that kind of fun. You wanted to go bike riding with your friends. Fitness, health, and wellness is the same thing. You don't start a gym program or routine because you want to impress yourself, because you want to impress somebody else, because you want to look a certain way. You start it because you want to get better at a skill or a craft. You want to be able to do some really cool things. That's why you do it. So again, we're going to wrap up today with balance. Find your balance emotionally. Find your balance mentally. Find your balance physically. Find your balance nutritionally. If you try to go for broke in any of these categories, you will fail. It is only a matter of time. Pick a fitness regimen and routine that is sustainable, that you enjoy, and that you like. Enjoy and like doing are kind of the same thing. That you enjoy, and that is something you can do long term. Adjust and modify your diet to include and incorporate more healthy choices. Start cutting back on the, sugary, starchy, processed foods, and find your diet. Don't just follow someone else's regimen, because again, it has to come from within. It has to be your balance. It has to be your thing. But yeah, that's that's our topic on balance today. Hope you guys enjoyed the ride and had some fun and maybe learned a little bit. So before we wrap the show up for today, I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor. If anybody's got any questions, we can absolutely field those right now and, chit chat for a little bit longer. Oh, man, that's good coffee. So it's a little cold now. I think I got to remember to take a few more sips as we're talking and diving into the topic so that way I don't end up with a cold cup of coffee by the end. Ah, all right. Well, that's our time for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had fun. I hope I hope my story is a little bit of your story, and I hope you were able to see parts of yourself within it, and maybe made some connections today that will help you out, that will help you, get where you're going. But as always, thanks for joining us, and I will see you guys next Saturday. Have fun trail hiking, sir, and have a great weekend.